When you look at Jeffersonville, Indiana today, it is a quiet, peaceful town. It's hard to picture it as a city that attracted visitors from all across the country in the early 1900s. Jeff Boat, formerly Howard Shipyards, which once provided thousands of jobs, is no longer in business. When compared to the other side of the river, Jeffersonville has always seemed insignificant. When I was in the message, I used to wonder what brought the Branham family to Jeffersonville. Most message believers knew William Branham and his nuclear family, but very few knew William Branham's extended family. William Branham's siblings never spent much time with the message. I also wondered why message believers in Jeffersonville had been told that all historical records were destroyed during the 1937 flood. I was surprised when a message brother and sister told me that they had found that most records had survived. I wondered if the Jeffersonville Library held any clues to the Branham family migration from Kentucky. They said that some of the records were stored in the Indiana room of the Jeffersonville Public Library. When I got there, I was overwhelmed by the amount of information stored in one single room. Practically every aspect of Indiana history was contained in books on the shelves. And if the shelves didn't have something, it could easily be ordered. I was most interested in the local newspaper archives. Before modern social media, newspapers printed stories about all social events, big and small. From locals leaving town to visit relatives, to new families arriving, the newspapers would tell it all. Large cabinets with rows of long, thin drawers held hundreds, thousands of boxes containing rolls of microfiche. Each drawer held several years' worth of newspapers, all labeled in chronological order, dating back to the 1800s. For as long as newspapers had been printed, they had been captured in the tiny little images of the microfiche rolls, like snapshots in time capturing each day of Jeffersonville history. It took me a while to remember how to use a microfiche projector. I hadn't had to use one since my school days, and even then, I'm certain that a teacher or a librarian had loaded the reel into the machine. In the age of computers and technology, this was a skill that had gotten just a little rusty. The friendly staff at the library helped me, though, and I was on my way. Getting the projector working, however, was the easy part. There were literally hundreds of thousands of newspaper articles, and using this older technology, they cannot be indexed or searched. Unlike a computer query in an internet browser, each reel must be loaded, viewed, and actually read in order to find a result for any search. It was a painstaking process, especially since I didn't know what I was looking for. One thing was for certain. I became a familiar face at the library. During lunch, after work, sometimes before work, I scanned through article after article, issue after issue. The first thing I was curious about was the actual loss of records, if any, because of the 1937 flood. Since we had been told that all newspapers confirming the prophet's stories were destroyed in flood waters, and since I now stood before drawers dating back to the 1800s, I wanted to know what was missing. I was certain that the water would have had some impact, especially for any archives that were stored on the first floors of buildings. To my surprise, not a single issue was missing. The newspaper appeared to have shut down for a brief period when the flood hit, but reporters were on the scene covering the disaster and printing it as the disaster unfolded.